Hello everybody, my name is Darren Yao, and this video is for a project for my Intro to Psychology course at UCR. This is Pavlov's discovery, all about classical conditioning. So today we'll be talking about Ivan Pavlov, who he was, classical conditioning, acquisition, extinction, and spontaneous recovery. So let's start with who was Ivan Pavlov. He was a Russian physiologist researching the digestive systems of dogs. He noticed that dogs would salivate when directly presented with food, but then over time ended up responding before food was even presented. So what's going on there? Basically, the theory was that the dogs were associating sounds of feeding time with the food itself and salivating to those sounds. Sounds like the door opening for feeding time or like the carts of food rolling into the room. They associate those sounds with food, causing them to salivate. So what Pavlov did was conduct an experiment where he rang a bell each time before feeding. And at first, the dog showed no reaction to the bell. But then over the course of the experiment, the dog began salivating to the sound of the bell. So it proved his theory. That experiment led to the discovery of a learning process known as classical conditioning. We see classical conditioning ourselves every single day. Like, let's say you get a text on your phone, you hear the buzz, you like immediately, instinctively check over it. You might like maybe even feel excited to it. Or let's say like ice cream trucks, you hear the music of an ice cream truck down the road and you immediately associate like maybe like your kid memories, like nostalgia and happy times with it. Those are all examples of classical conditioning. So let's talk about acquisition, extinction, and recovery. So what's acquisition? It's the initial learning period where one learns to connect neutral stimulus and unconditioned stimulus. An example of this is with Pavlov's theory. The dog learning to connect the sound of the bell to feeding time. Now for extinction, that's the decrease in conditioned response when the unconditioned stimulus is no longer present with the conditioned stimulus. So that would be like if food was no longer being presented with the sound of a ringing bell. Eventually the dogs would stop responding to the bell because no more food. And lastly, we have spontaneous recovery. That is the return of a previously extinguished conditioned response after a rest period, a break. So an example of this would be like after a long break, you finally ring the bell and boom, the dogs suddenly start salivating again. That's kind of like a relapse. That's basically what spontaneous recovery is. I have this graph here that kind of helps explain it. So take a look at this graph. This is conditioned response, this is low, this is high, and this is time going forward. So imagine this front start, this is acquisition, this is dogs realizing that the sound of a bell is connected to food. And then this is extinction, where we stop presenting food with the bell, and then it starts to just die down. And this is our pause. All of a sudden we ring the bell and boom, we have a spontaneous recovery of conditioned response. But then it slightly dies down because of the extinction. Some interesting facts are that Pavlov discovered classical conditioning all by accident. He was a physiologist, not a psychologist. Classical conditioning is everywhere, like I said, with the ice cream truck and things like that. And Pavlov's discovery influenced studies on human learning and helping with treating phobias and addictions. And that's pretty cool. So thank you for watching, and yeah.